Carl Jung's secret map to true love. Have you ever felt that inexplicable pull towards someone? That mysterious force that makes your heart race and your mind wander? What if I told you that this magnetic attraction isn't random chance, but something encoded in your very psyche? Something Carl Jung discovered decades ago but most relationship experts still ignore? Welcome to the hidden world of the collective unconscious, where your deepest desires and fears about love have been shaped long before you were born. I'm about to reveal Jung's most profound insights about love. Insights that could transform your relationships forever. If you want to understand why you keep falling for the same type of person, or why your relationships follow familiar patterns, stay with me for the next few minutes. This isn't just another relationship video. This is about uncovering the archetypal forces that have been silently guiding your love life all along. According to Jung, we don't just fall in love with a person. We fall in love with a reflection of something buried deep within our own unconscious. This isn't just theory. This is the key to understanding why some relationships feel so cosmically significant while others leave us feeling empty. The ancient Greeks had many words for love: eros, philia, storge, agape, ludus, pragma, and philassia. But Jung saw beyond these categories to something far more primal and powerful. He understood that love is the battlefield where our conscious and unconscious minds wage their greatest wars and forge their most beautiful alliances. What if your attraction to certain people isn't really about them at all? What if it's about unconscious projections, shadow aspects of yourself that you're not yet ready to face directly? Jung called this phenomenon projection, and understanding it might be the most important relationship skill you'll ever develop. Think about your most intense relationship. The one that consumed you. The one that felt like destiny. Jung would say that wasn't coincidence, it was your unconscious recognizing something primordial, something archetypal. Something that resonated with patterns established in humanity's collective psyche over millennia. I'm about to share the single most overlooked aspect of Jung's work on relationships. Something that explains why passion fades in some relationships but deepens in others. If you've ever wondered why the initial chemistry wears off, you need to hear this. The concept of the anima and animus revolutionizes how we understand attraction. Jung proposed that men carry within them an unconscious feminine aspect, the anima, while women carry an unconscious masculine aspect, the animus. These aren't just abstract concepts, they're active forces shaping who you find irresistible. Consider this: when you feel that indescribable click with someone, you're not just connecting with their physical presence or personality. According to Jung, you're recognizing something ancient and powerful, an archetype that resonates with the deepest layers of your unconscious mind. The most transformative relationships aren't those that make us feel comfortable, they're the ones that bring our shadows into the light. Jung believed that truly understanding love requires confronting the darkest, most uncomfortable parts of ourselves. When we project our shadow, the repressed, unacknowledged parts of our psyche, onto our partners, we create relationships built on illusion rather than authentic connection. This is why so many people find themselves repeatedly disappointed when the initial infatuation fades. What you call falling in love might actually be recognizing parts of yourself you've disowned or repressed. That overwhelming attraction? It could be your psyche's desperate attempt to reclaim lost aspects of your wholeness through another person. The most painful breakups often hurt so deeply because they're not just the loss of a person, they're the loss of projected parts of ourselves that we weren't ready to integrate directly. When the relationship ends, we feel literally incomplete. In the next section, I'll reveal why some of your most powerful attractions might actually be warning signs, and how to tell the difference between genuine connection and psychological projection. This distinction could save you years of heartache. Jung proposed that meaningful relationships move through distinct stages, and understanding these stages can help you navigate the inevitable challenges that arise when two complex psyches interact. The initial projection phase is just the beginning. Consider the relationships that have most deeply wounded you. Jung would suggest these relationships weren't failures, they were opportunities to reclaim disowned aspects of yourself. The pain you felt was the growing pain of your psyche attempting to become whole. The concept of synchronicity, meaningful coincidences, appears frequently in romantic connections. Those strange coincidences when you meet someone special aren't random, according to Jung. They're manifestations of underlying patterns in the collective unconscious. That feeling of "I've known you before" when meeting someone new? Jung would attribute this to archetypal recognition, your unconscious mind recognizing patterns that have existed throughout human history, patterns that connect to your deepest psychological needs. The paradox of intimacy is that true connection requires both fusion and separation. Jung understood that healthy relationships require maintaining individual wholeness while creating a shared psychological space, what he might have called a relationship consciousness. The anima and animus aren't just abstract concepts. They're active forces in your psyche that drive your most powerful attractions. The anima represents the feminine aspects within men, while the animus represents masculine aspects within women. When you feel instantly drawn to someone, it may be because they embody qualities of your anima or animus. This explains why rational people can make seemingly irrational choices in love. They're responding to deep archetypal patterns, not conscious preferences. Your earliest relationships, particularly with parents or caregivers of the opposite sex, help shape your anima or animus. This is why some people find themselves repeatedly attracted to partners who resemble their parents, psychologically if not physically. Jung proposed that we go through stages in developing our relationship with the anima or animus. In immature stages, these archetypes manifest as simplistic idealizations or demonizations. As we grow psychologically, our relationship with these inner aspects becomes more nuanced. If you've ever wondered why you keep falling for the same type of person despite promising yourself, never again, what I'm about to share will be a revelation. Understanding this pattern is the first step to breaking it. The anima often appears in men's dreams as mysterious female figures, sometimes nurturing, sometimes destructive. Similarly, the animus appears in women's dreams as male figures representing action, logic, or authority. These dream manifestations provide clues about your unconscious relationship patterns. When we project our anima or animus onto real people, we're essentially falling in love with aspects of ourselves, parts we haven't yet fully integrated into our conscious identity. This explains the intensity of romantic projection and the pain when these projections inevitably collapse. A healthy relationship requires withdrawing these projections over time, seeing your partner as they truly are, not as carriers of your unconscious material. This withdrawal process is essential for genuine intimacy, but it can also trigger crises in relationships. The goal isn't to eliminate the anima or animus, but to develop a conscious relationship with these aspects of yourself. When you recognize these forces within, you're less likely to project them outward and more capable of authentic connection. Jung suggested that successful relationships involve mutual growth and individuation. Partners help each other recognize and integrate their anima/animus projections, facilitating each other's journey towards psychological wholeness. Beyond personal psychology lies Jung's groundbreaking concept of the collective unconscious, a shared psychological inheritance containing archetypes that have shaped human relationships since the beginning of time. Love isn't just personal, it's transpersonal. When you experience profound connection, you're tapping into patterns that have existed throughout human history. This explains why love themes in ancient myths still resonate deeply with us today. The archetype of the divine couple appears across cultures, from Shiva and Shakti to Zeus and Hera, Adam and Eve to Osiris and Isis. These aren't just stories, they're symbolic representations of psychological patterns that continue to shape our expectations and experiences of love. The hero's journey, another universal archetype, often involves love as either motivation or reward. Consider how many heroes undertake their quests for love or find love as a result of their transformation. This isn't coincidence, it reflects deep psychological truth. I'm about to explain why some relationships feel fated or destined. A Jungian perspective that goes beyond simple chemistry or compatibility. This understanding could transform how you view your most significant relationships. Jung introduced the concept of the temenos, a protected sacred space where transformation can occur. In relationships, creating a psychological temenos allows both partners to be vulnerable enough for genuine growth and healing. The archetype of transformation through relationship appears repeatedly across cultures. Beauty and the Beast, Cupid and Psyche, countless fairy tales where love transforms the participants. These stories endure because they reflect psychological realities we all experience. The alchemical wedding, a concept from medieval alchemy that fascinated Jung, symbolizes the union of opposites within the psyche. Successful relationships facilitate this inner union, helping each partner integrate opposing aspects of themselves. Consider the paradox. The people who trigger us most intensely are often those who activate our deepest unconscious material. From a Jungian perspective, difficult relationships aren't obstacles to growth, they're catalysts for it. The concept of the wounded healer applies powerfully to relationships. Often, the very wounds that cause us pain become the source of our deepest capacity for connection, if we can transform them through consciousness rather than endless projection. Jung's concept of individuation, the process of becoming psychologically whole, has profound implications for relationships. Contrary to romantic myths, the purpose of relationship isn't to complete you but to help you become complete in yourself. The strongest relationships form between two individuals engaged in their own individuation processes. When both partners are committed to their own wholeness, they create a relationship that supports growth rather than enabling stagnation. The initial stage of romantic love often involves projection and idealization. The middle stage involves disillusionment and conflict as projections collapse. The mature stage, rarely reached without conscious effort, involves seeing and accepting the real person beneath the projections. Jung observed that many relationships fail during the disillusionment phase because people mistake the withdrawal of projections for falling out of love. In reality, this challenging phase is the prerequisite for deeper, more authentic connection. What I'm about to share completely contradicts conventional wisdom about soulmates, but offers a far more profound understanding of meaningful connection. This perspective changed my entire approach to relationships. The concept of the container relationship suggests that some connections serve primarily to hold the psychological tensions necessary for growth. These relationships may not be permanently comfortable, but they create the conditions for transformation. Jung distinguished between spirit and soul in relationships. Spirit-based connections emphasize shared values, goals, and intellectual compatibility. Soul-based connections operate at a deeper level, often involving mutual wounding and healing, shared shadow work, and archetypal resonance. The individuation process requires confronting and integrating the shadow, those aspects of ourselves we've rejected or repressed. Intimate relationships inevitably activate shadow material, making them both challenging and potentially transformative. The psychological concept of inflation applies when someone over-identifies with an archetype. In relationships, inflation might manifest as one partner playing savior to another's victim, creating temporary satisfaction but ultimately unhealthy dynamics. Jung's research into alchemical symbolism revealed parallels between the alchemical process and the development of relationships. Both involve containers, catalysts, dissolution of old forms, confrontation with shadow material, and eventually the creation of something new and precious. Jung's work on synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that cannot be explained by cause and effect, offers fascinating insights into why some relationships feel meant to be. These aren't just subjective feelings. They're expressions of archetypal patterns manifesting in our lives. Dream symbols often predict or reflect relationship dynamics before we're consciously aware of them. Pay attention to recurring symbols in your dreams about relationships. They may contain wisdom from your unconscious about patterns you're enacting. The concept of the temenos, or sacred container, applies powerfully to committed relationships. Creating psychological and emotional safety allows both partners to be vulnerable enough to engage with shadow material and experience genuine transformation. Jung observed that significant relationships often begin with synchronistic events, meaningful coincidences that seem to suggest a deeper pattern or purpose. These aren't just random occurrences but manifestations of archetypal forces at work. The archetype of the hieros gamos, the sacred marriage, appears across mythologies and speaks to the union of opposing psychological forces. In relationships, this manifests as the integration of masculine and feminine principles within each individual. Jung's concept of the transcendent function describes the psyche's ability to unite opposing forces to create something new. In relationships, this might manifest as the ability to hold conflicting needs or perspectives without dissolving the connection. The Jungian, alchemical term for union, represents the coming together of opposing elements. In relationships, authentic Jungian can only occur after both individuals have confronted their shadows and withdrawn their projections. The symbolism of the wedding appears across cultures not just as a social ritual but as a psychological archetype representing the union of conscious and unconscious aspects of the personality. This explains the emotional power of commitment ceremonies. Jung believed that symbols speak directly to the unconscious in ways rational language cannot. This explains why poetry, music, and art often express romantic feelings more accurately than literal description. They communicate at the symbolic level where love operates. Consider how certain locations, objects, or experiences take on profound meaning in relationships, becoming symbols that contain the emotional essence of the connection. These aren't just sentimental associations but manifestations of how symbols function psychologically. Jung's concept of complexes, emotionally charged groups of ideas that behave like autonomous personalities within the psyche, explains why we sometimes react to partners in ways that seem disproportionate or disconnected from the present situation. Your love complex contains all your experiences, beliefs, wounds, and expectations around romantic love. This complex activates powerfully in intimate relationships, sometimes hijacking your conscious intentions and reactions. The mother complex and father complex profoundly influence romantic choices. Men with unresolved mother complexes may seek maternal qualities in partners or reject women who remind them of their mothers. Women with unresolved father complexes show similar patterns. Jung observed that unresolved complexes tend to be projected onto partners, creating repetitive patterns in relationships. Until these complexes are made conscious, you're likely to recreate the same dynamics with different partners. The wounded child complex often manifests in relationships as excessive neediness, abandonment fears, or difficulty trusting. Recognizing this complex at work is the first step toward healing these patterns rather than endless reenactment. Relationship triggers. Those moments when you react with intensity disproportionate to the situation are usually complex activations. These moments offer valuable opportunities to make unconscious material conscious. Jung's research suggested that we're often attracted to people who activate our core complexes, not because we're masochistic, but because the psyche naturally seeks opportunities for healing through consciousness. The concept of the splinter personality describes aspects of ourselves that have become separated from conscious identity. In relationships, these splinters often emerge in projection, with partners mirroring disowned aspects of ourselves. Jung observed that relationships tend to establish compensatory dynamics. If one partner occupies a certain psychological position, the other often adopts its complement. This explains why relationship roles can feel both constraining and oddly comfortable. The achievement of genuine intimacy requires working through these complex activations rather than allowing them to drive unconscious behavior. This is the psychological work that transforms initial attraction into lasting connection. Jung's perspective challenges conventional understanding of attraction. Rather than simple chemistry or compatibility, attraction often stems from recognition of unconscious content, both positive and shadow material, in another person. The concept of the hook in relationships describes the specific quality in another person that activates your complexes. Understanding your psychological hooks helps you distinguish between authentic attraction and complex activation. Jung observed that we often project our soul image, anima or animus, onto potential partners. This explains the phenomenon of love at first sight, which is actually recognition of a match between someone's actual qualities and your inner soul image. The initial stage of attraction involves heavy projection, seeing the other through the lens of unconscious material rather than as they truly are. This explains both the intensity and the inevitable disillusionment of early attraction. Fantasy plays a crucial role in attraction, not as escape from reality but as a language through which the unconscious communicates its needs and patterns. Examining romantic fantasies provides clues about your psychological needs and relationship. Jung distinguished between regressive attraction, seeking to return to childhood patterns or parental figures, and progressive attraction, drawn to qualities that support your growth and individuation. Both can feel compelling but they lead to very different relationships. The phenomenon of being attracted to your opposite can be understood through Jung's principle of compensation. The unconscious seeks balance by drawing us toward qualities we've neglected in ourselves. Sexual attraction, from a Jungian perspective, isn't just physical but symbolic, an expression of the psyche's drive toward wholeness through union with the other. This explains why sexual connection can feel spiritually significant. Jung observed that what we find attractive changes as we individuate. As you integrate previously projected qualities, you become attracted to different types of partners. Those who match your evolving consciousness rather than your unresolved complexes. The concept of conscious relationship involves recognizing projection and attraction patterns without being controlled by them, choosing partners based on authentic connection rather than unconscious compulsion. Jung's concepts of anima and animus point to a profound truth. Psychological wholeness requires integrating masculine and feminine principles within each individual, regardless of biological sex or gender identity. The journey toward wholeness involves recognizing how cultural conditioning has shaped your relationship to masculine and feminine energies, often emphasizing one at the expense of the other. In immature stages of development, men often project their anima onto women rather than developing this feminine aspect internally. Similarly, women may project their animus rather than integrating these masculine qualities. The anima typically evolves through 4 stages in men's psychological development: Eve, purely biological; Helen, romantic/aesthetic; Mary, spiritual/devoted; and Sophia, wisdom. Each stage represents greater integration of feminine consciousness. The animus typically evolves through similar stages in women's development, from physical power to action/independence to spiritual meaning to wisdom. This evolution reflects increasing integration of masculine consciousness. Jung observed that psychological health involves flexibility between masculine and feminine modes of consciousness, the ability to access both logos, logical thinking, and eros, relational awareness, regardless of gender. The inner marriage, or Konyoungsho, represents the integration of masculine and feminine principles within the individual psyche. This inner union is reflected in one's capacity for mature external relationships. Relationship conflicts often stem from projecting unintegrated masculine or feminine aspects onto partners. For example, a man who hasn't developed his own emotional intelligence, anima, may expect his female partner to carry all emotional responsibility. The concept of contrasexual complexes explains why some people struggle with members of the opposite sex. They're actually struggling with unintegrated aspects of their own psyche projected outward. Jung suggested that the goal isn't androgyny but the ability to access both masculine and feminine modes of consciousness appropriate to different situations: strength and vulnerability, logic and intuition, assertion and receptivity. Jung's ultimate message about love is revolutionary. The purpose of relationship isn't happiness but consciousness. The most meaningful relationships catalyze growth, awareness and individuation for both partners. The path to conscious love involves withdrawing projections, gradually seeing your partner as they truly are rather than as carriers of your unconscious material. This is both challenging and liberating. Mature love emerges only after the collapse of projections and the confrontation with disillusionment. What remains is something rarer and more precious: love based on reality rather than fantasy. The ability to hold the tension between intimacy and autonomy, between connection and individuation, characterizes psychologically mature relationships. This balance isn't static but constantly renegotiated. Jung observed that relationships move through distinct stages: projection and merging, disillusionment and conflict, and potentially, though not inevitably, conscious relationship based on withdrawn projections and authentic seeing. The wounded healer archetype suggests that our capacity to love deeply comes not despite our wounds but through them, if we've done the work to transform wounding into consciousness rather than continued projection. The alchemical vessel of relationship requires both heat, conflict, passion, intensity, and containment, commitment, boundaries, shared values. Without heat, there's no transformation. Without containment, the process cannot complete. Jung's concept of temenos, sacred space, applies powerfully to conscious relationships. Creating psychological and emotional safety allows both partners to be vulnerable enough for genuine transformation. The process of individuation doesn't move in a straight line but spirals, returning to similar issues at deeper levels. This explains why relationship challenges often appear cyclical, offering opportunities for deeper integration each time. The ultimate gift of Jungian psychology to our understanding of love is this: when we stop using relationships to escape ourselves and instead use them as mirrors for self-knowledge, we discover a love more profound than romantic fantasy. A love that embraces the full humanity of both self and other. Unlock the true reasons behind love, Carl Jung's revolutionary insights.